All right, so President Trump has raised hundreds of millions of dollars over his conviction in the New York courts, but a number of Republican lawmakers say they want to do something about the hush money case in New York. They say it's the latest sign Democrats have weaponized the Justice Department against Republicans, and in particular, Mr. Trump. His opponents say anyone is politicizing the Justice Department. It is the 45th president himself. Let's bring in Republican Florida Congressman Laurel Lee, sits on the House Judiciary Committee. You all want to subpoena Alvin Bragg to come talk. He is the prosecutor in the New York case. What are you going to prove if Mr. Bragg comes?
Well, the most important thing to look at when it comes to Alvin Bragg's prosecution of Trump is the extent to which he really had to contort our justice system to bring it in the first place. This is a case that was predicated on a set of alleged misdemeanors for which the statute had expired. So you have a prosecutor up in New York who is not prosecuting violent crime, but pledged before he even took office that this was something that he was going to do.
All things we've covered and stipulated. The question is, how is that the purview of Congress?
One of the most important things that we can do in Congress is make sure we're conducting oversight. And the big picture here is the question about weaponization of government and whether two people, namely President Trump and, for example, President Biden, who have committed similar acts, are being treated the same way by our justice system. So as it relates to...
you don't make a distinction between federal oversight of the federal justice system and the DOJ and using Congress to have oversight of a local DA office in New York?
Well, of course there's a distinction. But here, one of the things that's an interesting feature of the Bragg case is that a very senior person at the Department of Justice actually left his job there to go and work on this case for DA Bragg. So, of course, we're interested in how that came to be. And more broadly, when we look at the special counsels and what's been going on at the department, for example, we have the Attorney General coming into the Judiciary Committee today. And one of the things that I think will be a focus there will be Special Counsel Hur's investigation and review of classified documents with President Biden, and his conclusion that while President Biden did, in fact, have documents, it's uncontroverted that he had classified documents that he shouldn't have had, that weren't stored properly or handled properly, but yet the ultimate conclusion there was not to bring criminal charges. Right. So
you guys going to get the copy of the audio of the Biden deposition interview?
Well, we certainly should, and I'll tell you why. So we've been given a transcript, and there's also an audio recording. And this is distinct and important because audio will reveal so much more context about the way words were said. We also know that there have been cases where the White House actually fixed up transcripts a little bit. Yeah. So it is an important difference for us, and will be illuminating about some of the things in the interview that we can't get from a cold transcript.
Yeah, no, it'll be very interesting to see how Merrick Garland tries to defend not releasing the audio, right? And they did one that it was going to be allow people to make deep fakes, which was bizarre. This is something, though, that some members of the Republican Party, fellow members of the House Republican Caucus, have gone a step further in terms of how to look at the DOJ. Here's Congressman Ronnie Jackson of Texas.
President Biden should just be ready, because on January 20 of next year, when he's former President Joe Biden, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I am going to encourage all of my colleagues and everybody that I have any influence over as a member of Congress to aggressively go after the president and his entire family.
How can Republicans be so upset over the weaponization of the DOJ? And I think they have a reasonable case to make, and then turn around and say, when we're in power, we're going to do the same thing.
Well, I think the focus for Republicans in Congress is really the concept of equal treatment. And that is, we're a nation.
But is equal bad treatment okay?
Well, we should only have cases, investigations, and prosecutions where there is a fact-based reason to be doing that. And that should be true whether it's somebody named Biden, somebody named Trump. And I think the overall concern from Republicans is that that's simply not what we've seen happening. That being said, certainly, I think in any case, for any American, this is so much bigger than any one person, our system of justice needs to be predicated on good faith investigations where the facts suggest that they are required.
Facts suggest a crime, then figure out who committed it.
Well, that's exactly what we don't want to do, and what we're concerned that this Department of Justice and certainly DA Bragg...
No, I'm saying you should only have investigations when the facts suggest there was a crime, and then go figure out who committed it.
Exactly. The facts and the incident should dictate that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Apologies. Next time we'll chat longer.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.